Prediction markets. Is it fair to call it gambling?
I think these days people increasingly are seeing a blurred line there. To your point about marketing speak, the companies are very keen to describe themselves one way, but certainly within Washington, I don't think a lot of people are seeing much of a difference. And for sure, in the sports gaming world, they see them as direct competitors.
Yeah, it's interesting. Gaming, gambling, what exactly is this? Denitsa, come on in. For those who maybe have been, living under a rock, which is kind of fine. I like to kind of hibernate every once in a while. Remind us what these prediction markets are all about and who are the big players.
Yeah, 2025 was the year of prediction markets. We had two big firms kind of dominate the space. Of course, Kalshi and Polymarket. Their valuation went through the roof. They started from like 1-2 billions, and both ended the year in the double digits of billions. So really, really rapid growth. And we're seeing not only those tech Silicon Valley names, we're seeing a lot of traditional finance names. We're seeing CME, we're seeing a lot of those traditional finance players getting involved in the space. So clearly this is an interest more beyond Silicon Valley. The volumes are crazy.
But tell us how it works. Like, can Tim or can we go out and place a bet? Like, who determines who can do what on the platform?
Super simple, super easy. So obviously sports betting you have to be 21. For this, 18 is enough. It's very accessible. You go, the bet is like as cheap as like a few cents or $1. And
you just go and create it on
anything. It's very simple. Yeah,
you can create the bet.
No, you cannot create the bet. You can place a bet.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, there is a way to claim a market, but of course it's up to the platform to create. But as we have seen in recent months, there is a lot of variety of bets on things that anywhere else you cannot bet, from the bet on Nicolás Maduro being outed to any type of pop culture thing and any type of
top artist on Spotify this year is on Kalshi right now.
Of course, that's very popular. Any type of mention market. People are watching like politicians talk on TV and betting on every word they say, every twist. Like, people are even making fun of this. We famously had the Coinbase CEO knowing that people are watching what he says on the earning calls, so he was crashing the market.
So that's where I want to bring in Lydia, because when you're in a world, Lydia Beyoud, where there is one person in control, like a CEO of a company, like Elon Musk, if the number of tweets that he sends between a certain period of time, that's a bet on Polymarket right now, or a prediction on Polymarket that one can make. What is the slippery slope that opens when one person is in control of the outcome here?
So that's something that I think regulators and policymakers are really grappling with. Particularly, I think the Maduro example that we highlight in the story has really made that so salient for everyone. Right now, generally, federal rules prohibit federal employees from trading on non-public information for their own financial gain. I think Representative Richie Torres is planning to introduce legislation, if he hasn't already this week, that would very clearly prohibit that type of trading on prediction markets. But really, we're kind of facing a different regime compared to how I think a lot of people think about insider trading that is regulated in equities markets or markets overseen by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Because, if you're in the derivative space and you are an energy producer, an agriculture producer, you're expected to trade on knowing, my crop's really great this year, or we're pumping so much oil and gas out of the ground. I'm able to hedge my position and sort of let my knowledge that I have inform both me and then the market. There's kind of a market utility argument that is made in those traditional markets, and we're seeing that, again, sort of these blurred lines shift into prediction markets, and people sort of grappling okay, well, what's okay insider information? What benefits everyone to have insiders trading and kind of, as they like to say, drawing on the wisdom of the crowd and doing price improvement. But
so not exactly truth machines, right?
Well, that is the big debate about how are you going to draw that line about, if you are Elon Musk there are mention markets on what you might say during your, not to pick on Elon, any executive.
Right.
And you're going to, there are mention markets on what you might say in your quarterly call. Do you swing a market just for funsies? Do you swing it knowing that, your buddy's buddy might have some money riding on the line? And then how does anyone catch that? Should they be catching it? There's so many open policy questions that are being asked, I think, around Washington right now because of these markets.
Yeah, there's an interesting I'm just going through Kalshi. You could spend, I know both of you did this, like you can spend hours going through this, but like, does it really serve the market, Denitsa, to ask if will Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce be married before January 1st,
That's
2027?
important stuff, too.
It is important stuff. We had a lot of Bloomberg headlines on this as well. But
Did
indeed,
we?
we did.
Okay, I didn't know.
But it is important. So what a lot of those prediction micro believers says, we're going to bring a lot of people through sports. So for example, Kalshi has 90% of their volumes very often coming from sports. So it's pretty hard to make the argument that this is a truth machine at the moment. But what some people hope and believe is that eventually some of those casino elements, some of those betting elements will bring people who want to bet on things like economic data, things like maybe people want to hedge. Like the hedging scenario is something that has come up a lot. Talking to people, it seems like it's not coming anytime soon, but people are saying, oh, maybe I want to hedge the weather in Florida. Maybe I have a house and I can buy insurance.
Well, I don't understand that.
They keep going on topic, and I'm trying to take them off topic. Like, here's another one, for example. What will Rachel Maddow say during Jimmy Kimmel Live?
Right.
Okay.
That's a classic
Oil,
mention market.
Epstein, corrupt/corruption, ICE, Russia, Ukraine, affordability, healthcare.
All right, but there's serious stuff like the Fed decision in January.
Yes.
89% say the Fed will
that
maintain.
actually helpful for what we do.
And we
Like,
talked about this
Fed
during
chair.
elections and different things.
For sure, elections have proven to be one pretty good.
Help
market
me
for-
understand, though, and well, Lydia, come on back in here. One of the things I'm curious about is, like, who is checking, who is making these trades? Is Kalshi or is Polymarket, are they actually checking, especially when it could be potentially insider trading? Do they know exactly who's making these trades? Are they doing due diligence?
So these exchanges are structured as self-regulatory organizations, so they're supposed to kind of monitor trades and root out any potential for market manipulation. Again, the sort of where you draw the line between what's okay and what's not okay on insider trading, that's a judgment call, I think, except in all but the most clear-cut instances. But exchanges can self-report information to the CFTC. The CFTC can look into it. Again, it operates differently than the Securities Exchange Commission. But
what's the bandwidth for regulators to want to take this on?
The CFTC is chronically underfunded. They have, I think, roughly 500 staff. The SEC has four or five times, maybe 10 times that number, not quite, but they are understaffed for the task at hand, and there are more applicants. I mean, I think we mentioned in the story that there's a lot of interest, driven heavily by sports trading, but also in the economics, also in other spaces, and so they're kind of underwater in terms of all that there is to do for market demand for this space. So I think a lot of people are wondering what the CFTC will do, but if we look at the new chairman, Michael Selig, when he was an attorney in private practice, he wrote a comment letter that was pushing back during the Biden administration on any effort to rein in sports prediction markets, for example, or really most prediction markets. So I think you've got someone who's very, he said he's going to defer to the courts on how the courts might eventually rule on this topic, but at least when he was an attorney representing clients, he was very much in favor of them.
Before we let you guys go, Denitsa, if we think about the universe of prediction markets, Robinhood's getting into it. Kalshi and Polymarket are the big ones, and they count, I think, a Trump as advisors to both of those.
Yeah.
Are these all regulated the same way? Or is one regulated differently than the others?
So also, obviously, they have the Trump as advisor, and Trump Media is looking into launching a prediction
Great
market.
point.
And a lot of the sports betting companies are looking to also get into prediction market. So Kalshi so far is obviously under the CFTC. Polymarket is just entering the US. They have this beta test, so they're only onboarding some users. So currently, most of the bets on Polymarket are actually in this weird regulatory space where a lot of them are coming from abroad and isn't necessarily regulated. Under the CFTC, we've seen very different decisions. For example, there was a market connected with the United Care CEO killing, and CFTC asked Kalshi to remove that market, but Polymarket, who is not under that jurisdiction, actually kept the market. So you can see there are very different outcomes depending on the regulation.